motion's put out, the only way we could deal with it then is to motion to table it. If that's what you're suggesting, then I will agree with you.
Yes, you can make that motion after the primary motion has been seconded.
Thank you, Dave.
Mary Lee, I believe you moved.
Yes, I made a motion.
Be approved. Is there a
I did.
second?
Second, Fenza.
Rob Fenza has seconded. There's been a motion and a second to approve the recommendation as presented to the pre-circulated resolution. I'd like to structure this discussion on the motion as follows. As chair, I'd like to make a few brief introductory comments and then invite President Bendaputi to provide a high-level overview of the recommendation. And then I'll invite trustees to raise their virtual hands to indicate their interest in providing comment, questions during the discussion. And that would be the appropriate time for Anthony for whatever motion you have desire to present. I do want to express our deepest gratitude and appreciation to President Bendaputi for her courageous and visionary leadership in initiating this reimagining of our Commonwealth campus system. 2 years ago, the Board of Trustees charged President Bendaputi and her team with conducting an analysis of the Commonwealth campus ecosystem and the evolving needs of the Commonwealth. Her willingness to confront long-standing challenges with clarity, compassion, and resolve has brought renewed focus to the essential role these campuses play in fulfilling Penn State's access mission. By aligning this vital part of our university ecosystem with the demographic realities we face today, she has set in motion a transformation that our institution has needed to prioritize for decades. I also want to thank the leadership team of Margot Delacarpini, Vice President for Commonwealth Campuses, Tracy Lankilde, Interim Executive Vice President and Provost, and Michael Wade Smith, Senior Vice President and Chief of Staff, for their steadfast guidance throughout this process. In addition, I want to acknowledge the many working groups and dedicated staff who supported them. The Commonwealth Campus Ecosystem Future State Recommendation does reflect not only an extraordinary amount of thoughtful work, but also a deep commitment to the future of Penn State and the students and communities we serve. Finally, I want to thank my trustee colleagues for the amount of time that each of you have put into reviewing the information and the engagement and the dialogue that has occurred with each other and our Commonwealth campus communities since President Bendaputi's announcement of the roadmap for Penn State's future in January of 2024. I want to note that we received over almost 100 questions from trustees and that have been answered and posted to our diligent website. Please note that pursuant to Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, the board did hold executive sessions on May 9 and May 15 related to this topic. We spent close to 4 hours in deliberations regarding it. The exceptions cited for the sessions were based on topics expected to be covered. Some topics were not eventually discussed, but for clarity, the executive sessions to discuss the campus ecosystem recommendation on May 9 and 15 utilized sections 708A 2, 3, 5, and 6 of the Pennsylvania Sunshine Law. The board discussed strategies relating to personnel, labor relations, and collective bargaining agreements. Consideration of the sale or lease of real property at campuses proposed for closure, matters of academic admission, and standing at campuses proposed for closure and other confidential information protected by law. I'll now ask President Bendaputi to continue our discussion regarding the proposed recommendation to close 7 campuses: Du Bois, Fayette, Mont Alto, New Kensington, Shenango, Wilkes-Barre, and York, following a 2-year wind-down period that is focused on supporting students through degree completion, ensuring thoughtful transitions for faculty, staff, and working with local stakeholders on those sites. At the same time, the proposal includes continued investment in 5 campuses: Beaver, Greater Valley, Hazleton, Schuylkill, and Scranton, with a more coordinated strategy to enhance academic offerings, improve student support, and strengthen Penn State's service to key regions of the Commonwealth. Finally, the recommendation includes reinvesting resources to bolster academics, student services, and facilities at all remaining campuses, including those that are not part of the working group's review. Neely, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Kleppinger, and good evening, everyone. This is a pivotal moment for Penn State and for each of us as leaders entrusted with its future. I want to begin by acknowledging how significant, how deeply emotional, and how consequential this decision is. We're not making a technical adjustment. We're charting a new course for the next century, for the future of our land grant mission. The path that we recommend has been shaped by data, not just quantitative, but qualitative narrative input as well. Over the past 10 years, the 7 campuses recommended for closure have experienced a 43% decline in enrollment. The financial picture is also and equally sobering. We are spreading our students, faculty, and staff so thin that we jeopardize the quality of education and the support that we can offer. We are subsidizing decline at the expense of growth. I want to be clear, we did not arrive at this moment because people failed. In fact, the opposite is true. We heard from more than 500 people, as you heard from Chair Kleppinger, emails, letters, calls, mostly, of course, advocating for their local campus. And that's completely understandable. These campuses have changed lives. They've fueled businesses, and they've brought Penn State into their communities. That pride is earned, and the fear of losing it is real. But that passion does not change the reality that we must contend with. Maintaining the status quo is not sustainable. Many are understandably hoping for a way to have it all. But honestly, the numbers tell a different story. Many of you have heard us talk about the demographic cliff. It'll take you 2 clicks on your computer or your phone to see what we mean. From 2008 on to through 2024, if you look at the declining birth rates, you see why it's called the demographic cliff. So we now know, at least for the next 2 decades, enrollments are going to drop nationally as well as in Pennsylvania. And that is why we are recommending a closure of 7 campuses following the spring 2027 semester. And we are recommending continued investment in 13 others. This is a strategic, considerate, and we believe a humane plan to allow for orderly transitions and to maximize opportunities elsewhere. Through this all, supporting our people is my top priority. Every single student will have a path to complete their degree if you're now at a Commonwealth campus or you're beginning this fall. We've actually already begun to deploy navigation coaches to help them navigate that path with support at every single step. Faculty contracts, and tenure will be honored. And for our staff, we will work hard to manage transitions through priority consideration for jobs across Penn State. We intend to use this 2-year wind down to avoid unnecessary disruptions. This is not a cliff. It's a ramp with support at every step. Now, in parallel, we will begin immediately the work of repurposing the 7 campuses slated for closure of traditional academic degrees. Dr. Renata Engel, our new VP of Commonwealth Campuses, and Mike Steffen, our VP for Government and Community Relations, will co-lead these efforts. They plan to bring together local, state, elected officials, business and community leaders, donors and alumni in every community to chart a new future, one that meets local needs, workforce needs, economic development needs that reflect local opportunity. That future may or may not involve Penn State directly, depending on what the opportunity is, but we are committed to help shaping it, and we look forward to working with all the constituencies that we've named. Just as important, we must now reimagine the entire Penn State system. Our 13 retained campuses, University Park, World Campus, Penn State Dickinson Law, Penn State College of Medicine, Penn State Health, and Penn College of Technology. This is an ecosystem, and we must plan for all of them to thrive together. And let me say this directly. Our commitment to the Commonwealth extends far beyond our academic operations. Community-centered programs, like our extension work in all 67 Pennsylvania counties, continues. Our launch boxes, Invent Penn State, the Digital Foundry, also offerings like the Pulo Center, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institutes, and other avenues will continue to support Pennsylvanians all over, regardless of what happens to a particular campus. That engagement does not end. After these closures, you may wonder, where does Penn State stand? Well, given that this system is almost 100 years old, I hope it comes as no surprise to anyone that we have to adapt. But I want to assure you that even after these closures, Penn State will have the largest system of campuses of any university, not just in the Big Ten, but of any land-grant institution in the country. We will still be in more counties. We will still be serving more communities. We will still be touching more lives than any other institution of our kind. But with this plan, now we can plan for our future with clarity, with a commitment to excellence, and with the ability to invest in what works. We have not had the ability to invest as much as we need to. I know this is difficult. Believe me, I know this is difficult. But I also know it's the right moment for courageous leadership, not to retreat, but to reposition us for the next century of excellence. I hope we can move forward together in pursuit of another century of impact and excellence. Thank you, Chair Kleppinger.
Thank you, Neely. And Shannon, I do want to note I've got an indication on my screen that the meeting is being transcribed by AI Companion. I don't know if someone accessed that or how that is happening, but just want to make sure that people are aware that that is appearing on my screen.
We did disable that, Chair Kleppinger.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, Neely, thank you for those comments and this decision before us. It's not only difficult, but it's deeply personal for all of us and the people involved. It asks us to weigh our history, our identity, and our contributions of campuses that have long been part of our fabric. The campuses have been more than just academic spaces. They've been homes, they've been lifelines, they've been beacons of opportunity, and the people connected to them, the students, the families, faculty, staff, alumni, and neighbors have left a lasting mark on our university and on each other. As board chair, I have listened with care to the voices of concern, pride, and hope that many of you have expressed to me personally, and I have also felt the weight of this moment alongside with my fellow trustees. None of us are taking this lightly, nor should we or could we, given what's at stake. But we also know that leadership sometimes does require us to confront the hard truths and to act not out of ease, but out of foresight and duty and assuring our future. I'll now open the floor to questions and discussion from members of the board. Because of the number of people that I think will want to be heard, I'm going to ask each of you to first limit your first question or comment to 2 or 3 minutes. We have 30 trustees or so on this call and want to give everyone an opportunity to speak should they desire to do so. And after everyone has had one opportunity, if time permits, we will allow for second and third comments and questions. With that, I will open it up to the group.
Thank you, David. It's Anthony. David, I'd like to start by thanking Neely for those words. I couldn't agree more, and you as well, David. Leadership does require standing by oneself at times. And I also agree that we have to adapt. The ecosystem has changed immensely over the history of this institution. The exception for me, however, is that I don't believe we've given this or the communities themselves the opportunity to reimagine themselves. And with that, I want to read something and enter into the record because it hit home for me when I read it. It's a piece from Kevin Snyder. Kevin's the Chancellor Emeritus at Penn State, New Kensington. And I think this is a microcosm of each of the communities that are going to be impacted and why I believe we should allow, certainly at least until we're in person again, before we make the decision to keep these open or close them, to at least give these communities an opportunity to engage us further. The Penn State Board of Trustees are considering closing its New Kensington campus, which will end what has been a remarkable effort by our small campus to successfully revitalize a region while leading the way to explore future-ready education. The following letter to the trustees sets the record straight about what will be lost in the decision to close this unique campus. It was a letter, I think, May 20th. This letter was distributed to us. Penn State must evolve to survive. Penn State New Kensington already has. At a time when the university faces a choice between retreat and reinvention, it is poised to close one of the few campuses already evolving and succeeding. That's what's at stake in the May 22nd vote to shutter Penn State New Kensington, PSNK, one of 7 Commonwealth campuses recommended for closure. This is not a nostalgic defense of a small campus. It is a record, a roadmap, and a call for clarity. Before casting a vote with lasting consequence, trustees and senior leadership deserve to understand what PSNK has already become and what Penn State will lose if this decision proceeds. A vision that was working. As Chancellor of PSNK for nearly 17 years, I witnessed firsthand the demographic and financial headwinds facing higher education. Penn State, like many institutions, struggled to respond systemically, leaving individual campuses to chart their own paths in a system not built for innovation within a framework designed for the last century. At PSNK, we embrace the challenge of reinvention by working to define the educational model of the future, one grounded in relevance, regional alignment, cost containment, and forward-looking education. Our approach was intentional: revitalize a Rust Belt community while offering a future-ready education that would attract students to our campus and prepare them for success in an era of accelerating technological change. And it was working. Our revitalization strategy centered on innovation, partnership, and new educational models. Despite our small size, we created a model and initiatives that are recognized by business leaders, community partners, funders, and educators across the region. While the pieces have only been in place since June 2022, we're already beginning to see enrollment growth in the electromechanical engineering technology, EMET, and radiological science, RadSci. That momentum only stalled when the possibility of closure was made public, casting doubt on the future of a campus that had become a beacon of possibility, a model of innovation with measurable impact. While many were surprised by the need to change, PSNK had anticipated and prepared for it. We built a replicable, scalable model for the future of public higher education. Consider these successes: developing high growth programs by aligning with Western Pennsylvania's growth areas in robotics, advanced manufacturing, and healthcare. PSNK is the only Commonwealth campus to offer a mix of programs in all 3 growth areas and is positioned to develop future programs that meet growth needs in Western PA. Penn State has already invested in labs and infrastructure for EMET,
Anthony, I
my-
apologize to interrupt you, but we could enter this entire letter into the record.
Yeah, I want to read it into the record for the public, David, since unfortunately those almost 4 hours of discussion, deliberation, and debate we had wasn't open to the public. And as a public institution, frankly, I think we've fallen short of the openness and transparency that we've promised them and that they deserve. So if you're going to interrupt me and stop me, then I guess I'll stop. But otherwise, I'd like to read it in because, again, I think it's disrespectful to these people. When the fact that we're not in person, to me, is disrespectful to those communities as well. I know we're going to use it as an excuse that's convenient for us, but
Well,
that's
now
not
is
the
an
reason.
opportunity for us to have the discussion in
But-
public.
but
And
they-
that's
but
why
they-
I'm trying to give everyone an opportunity to
Sure.
have.
So David,
at
if the
least
meeting's
3
going
minutes.
to, then maybe the meeting lasts longer than 2 hours.
Maybe it does.
Okay, so can I continue or are you telling me you don't want me to continue?
How much longer do you have? You already
gonna-
used 5 minutes.
I'm going to read for, it's another couple of pages.
I think then we'll enter it into the record as if it had been read.
So again, David, at this point, since I've taken how many minutes?
5.
I've taken 5 minutes. We're going to close 7 campuses. How many people might be impacted? And we're sitting here and we're talking about 5 minutes. It's like Allen Iverson when people complain about him not being at practice.
Well,
Practice.
it's 5 minutes, Anthony, it's 5 minutes for one person and we have 30
Hey,
people that
Dave-
might want to comment.
David, then we allow people as much time as they need to comment. This is a public institution. We get hundreds of millions of dollars a year from the state. We have legislators listening to this today. This is how we run our institution.
And that's why I would like to hear from each trustee.
Yeah, David, I'll have more to say. I'll let others speak. Thank you.
And Anthony, you had indicated you were going to make a motion. Would you care to make that motion?
No,
at this
no,
point?
I will after others have had an opportunity to speak. How's that? Or do you want me to, do you want to address that now?
No,
We probably should proceed with discussion.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Ted?
Thank you. What we believe we have today is 2 choices. Either vote in favor of closure of campuses or vote against it. We actually have 3 other choices that I'd like to reiterate that I sent you all a couple emails over the last couple of days. One of the other choices is we get more money from Harrisburg. That's probably not going to happen. Another choice is we get a major donor to give us $18 million to support these campuses. By the way, I would point out at the last executive committee meeting, the update from development showed that a donor had given $18 million for Commonwealth Campuses. I wonder what that's for. It supports maybe deferring this decision until we understand if that donor intended to support these campuses or not. I don't know. But the one I want to focus on is one I've already sent you emails on, and I know you haven't had time to read them. The first one is Neely's points were well taken. It's a new century. It's a new world. It's a new world of technology. By the way, the newest and most important technology change is AI. And I've sent all of you a sample of what I say we can do in your email. I sent you 100,000 names of students, their school, their grade point average, their outside interests. What a great place to farm students for Commonwealth campuses. We turn 100,000 kids away that want to go to Penn State, and we do almost nothing about recruiting them for another campus. That's not a criticism. That's a problem with manually trying to deal with 100,000 different people. AI can give you a list like the list I sent you so that we can say to each campus, here are 17 kids that from your county that want to be in nursing that applied to Penn State UP. So the number one thing that we ought to consider and understand better is how AI can fill thousands of empty seats. I remind you all, I was the first one that identified the 10,000 empty seats, not as a reason for closure, but a reason for opportunity to fill those empty seats. So my other comment is please look at my email that you got today, where I talk about engaging the community locally at 3 campuses, 3 of the 7. The reason for the 3 of the 7 are A, New Kensington, because I just celebrated my 50th anniversary with my wonderful wife 2 days ago, who's from New Kensington. our great niece and great nephew attend New Kensington. The state legislature has worked with the bus company to add a bus line from all the eastern school districts to end at the New Kensington campus. I moved next to York. The reason I would focus on York is because of my good friend who, Elliot Weinstein, who used to be a trustee and is a major business leader in York. And lastly, Mont Alto, where my dad started his Penn State career in the 30s, graduated in 41 in forestry, and went on to have a career in the Boy Scouts because of that background. What I sent you today was a result of hours and hours of meetings with everybody from those three campuses: faculty, mayors, elected officials, business leaders, everybody you can think of. And they were unanimous in their commitment because I said, here's the rule. I know you're wonderful. Don't tell me that. What I want is a proposal, what you're going to do to fill seats in your campus without any help from University Park other than permission to do it. And all of you received my three proposals that are around 500 students each that they're committed to recruiting. I'm committed to help them do that if you'll allow me. So I suggest we look at those proposals, 500 additional students in each campus. Neely said it right. It's about the data. Well, the data is what I sent you this morning was the data to solve this problem. What I sent you a couple of days ago was the technology to solve this problem. And I will close it with my personal commitment to work with each of those three campuses. And by the way, the other four, if they'd like to talk to me about their proposal to fill seats. So I stand for a vote to go on, not a vote for closure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted. I'll try to take people in order. Karen Quintos was next.
Yeah, thanks, David. Hey, I echo the sentiment around. I think you and Neely did a great job just talking about how hard and emotional this is. It's been something that's been going on for a while. We, as the Board of Trustees, asked Neely and the leadership team to go and look at this. And we have to trust that the experts, which are Neely's team, have come back with a recommendation that makes sense. The other part of it, to be really explicit, is this is not just a Penn State problem. This is a Pennsylvania challenge. Pennsylvania has way too much capacity, and to Neely's point, it's not going to get any better. So I applaud the courage of stepping up and doing this. I would also suggest or reinforce the fact that the trust that we have in the leadership team, if during this due diligence process in the next 3 to 6 months, all of these great ideas, all of these things that people are finally coming out of the woodwork and suggesting that we do, if something material comes out, I think we have to trust the leadership team that they're gonna evaluate those things. They're not gonna put their head in the sand. But we've been looking at this for a year or so now. The numbers are the numbers. We need to continue to set up Penn State for financial success. I applaud how gracious the university has been in how we're going to handle the students, the faculty, the staff that are going to be impacted by this. And then finally, I would just add, I don't think delay is an option. This whole recommendation got leaked by somebody that sits on the Board of Trustees. It's out there, and we owe these students, faculty, and staff closure. So I vote in recommendation for the proposal that the leadership team has put forth. David.
Thank you, Karen. Carl?
Thanks, David. Can you guys hear me all right? I was
Yes.
earlier
Loud and
today.
clear.
Good. All right. Awesome. Again, to echo what's been said multiple times, I've been very impressed with Neely's work, with Michael Wade Smith's work, with their whole administration. It's been very, very impressive. The poise that they've had through this process is commendable. And I think it will bear repeating multiple times. It is a really big responsibility of this board to offer a world-class education to our students that is affordable. And for us to make it affordable, we have to have a balanced budget. The finance committee has done a great job balancing our budget. I've been very impressed with that as well. Ted, I'm very impressed with your passion. I'm not super impressed with your solutions. You mentioned state funding, you mentioned philanthropy, and then you said using AI to get new students. It was very broad, very passionate, but not super impressive. What I am impressed with is all of the work that the administration has done to educate us, to keep us informed, the clarity, the transparency. It's been really, really helpful to make a really tough decision. But one thing that I don't think gets talked about enough, and which is what I'm really passionate about and why I joined the board, is setting our students up for financial success post-graduation. And the graduation rates at some of these campuses are something that I don't think we're doing justice by these students. And when you get a degree from Penn State and when you go to Penn State, you can expect a commitment to excellence. And with that being said, I think that we need to really look at the P&L sheet, find ways to cut our costs, increase our revenue, and really provide our students with the best, most affordable education that they possibly get, because there is a cliff coming and we need to be able to attract people and give them a massive return on their investment. And without tough decisions like this being made readily, we're not going to be able to do that. So I am obviously going to support Neely's proposal, and I hope passion can be met with strategy and solutions. But thanks.
Thank you, Carl. Next would be Mary Lee.
Thanks, David. Like others on this call, unfortunately, I've had a lot of experience in making and living with these types of tough decisions. And by tough decisions, I mean the ones that disproportionately impact one group for the greater good. They're very difficult. I spent 40 years in the publishing and printing industries where technologies changed the businesses overnight and supply radically exceeded demand. We had to take tough actions to survive and refocus our resources on a new reality. I applaud President Bendapudi and the working group who brought forward the recommendations for consideration today. The only challenge I have is I think we should go deeper on the closures, as I fear we will be back here discussing the same facts and circumstances in a few years. That said, I defer to President Bendapudi, who rightfully points out in her executive summary that we need to focus on regions, not just individual communities, to fulfill our land grant mission. And speaking of land grant mission, I would be remiss, I love the data, and not pointing out some relevant statistics. And Michael Wade Smith, keep me on the straight and narrow here, and if I miss anything. As the report notes, being a land grant institution doesn't mean you have to put a campus in, quote, every corner of Pennsylvania. If you look at the Big Ten land grants, Penn State has more than 3 to 7 times the number of what others call branch campuses. Of the land grant institutions in the Big Ten, Ohio State has the most, 6 campuses. Now, I'm a huge fan of beating Ohio State at just about anything, but I'm just not sure that's the right contest we want to win. Let's be really clear and let's be really honest. This problem didn't sneak up on us. In fact, this board saw the Commonwealth Campus dashboards for the first time in early 2022, before President Bendapudi ever stepped foot on campus. We saw detailed information by campus on everything from enrollment trends, graduation rates, number of first-gen students, Pell Grant recipients, philanthropy, and yes, the financials, both on a standalone and a fully loaded basis. Those dashboards have been updated every year since then, and much of the same information is available to the public on the Penn State Data Digest website. This dialogue goes back to as far as I've been on the board, 2015. And I think back then we lacked the financial visibility and frankly, the stomach to really acknowledge and address the situation. We can't ignore these trends anymore. So Carl made one point. For the same 7 campuses we've talked about, where enrollment has dropped between 35 and 45% over 10 years, again, this didn't sneak up on us. The 4-year graduation rates range from 25.7% to 47.8%. Put differently, over 50 to nearly 75% of those students don't graduate in 4 years. The 6-year graduation rates range from 47.7 to 69.9%. Imagine, after 6 years of study and paying tuition, nearly 30 to over 50% of those students still haven't completed their degree and may never. And to Carl's point, that's just not right. Something isn't working. In total, these 7 campuses have driven nearly $20 million in direct losses and $50 million in fully loaded losses per year. In addition, we know there's $200 million needed to address deferred maintenance issues. We have all read about the other external forces and factors that we can't control. What's coming out of Washington, the demographic cliff. Over the last 100 days, executive orders have taken $60 million in indirect costs out of our indirect cost recovery out of our NIH and NSF research grants. And rumor has it the Department of Defense is next. The landscape for higher education is under siege. There's a potential tiered endowment tax out there based on the size of endowment per student. And last but not least, what was said by several, despite Penn State's best efforts, state legislators have refused to increase our state appropriation. Think about this. If we had just kept pace with the cost of living since our dramatic cut in 2011, we'd have $150 million, 40% more available in funding today. Adding insult to injury, performance-based funding formulas are being adjusted, and I'll say that in a kind way, in such a way that it will not fix the imbalance between what Penn State receives per student and what other state-related entities will receive. So lastly, I'd like to make this point.
You're up to your limit.
Yep. Yep. Can I just make one last point? A little yardstick. I use $20 million. $20 million is the equivalent of a 1% tuition increase for our students. What does $20 million in losses mean? A 1% increase. 50 million, 2.5%. You can do the match. On top of that, we got to cover other costs of living, inflation, salary increases, et cetera, of faculty and staff. I close with hope is not a strategy. We've got to do something. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and again and expecting a different outcome. I urge everyone on this board to uphold their fiduciary responsibilities to all Penn State stakeholders, current and future, and vote yes on this recommendation. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Mary Lee. Brandon?
Thanks, David. Before I begin, I want to reiterate some of my colleagues' comments and commend Neely and the administration for making a tough decision, for transparency, and quite frankly, for courage, for their courage. I mean, this is a very difficult decision, and it's something we've been looking at for a long time. And the administration, came back with recommendations that can help move the university forward. For me personally, short of being a father and a husband, the most rewarding thing that I do is serving on this board. And today is by far the most difficult vote that I've had since I've been here. A lot of you know I was raised in McKeesport, just minutes away from Greater Alleghenies campus. And I know firsthand the promise of those campuses and what they mean to those communities. As a kid, I played basketball in Greater Alleghenies, basketball courts. I got tutored. My first tutors were GA students, and those students helped shape my future. Penn State was and will continue to be a beacon of hope and opportunity for kids like me. So to be clear, I do not take this decision lightly. The closure of these campuses are going to have painful effects on all our constituencies in real ways. And to all those students and families and faculty, we hear you, we see you, we respect you, and we're committed to supporting you. But we also have to face undeniable realities, as Mary Lee and Carl and others mentioned, that we're falling off a demographic cliff. There's simply fewer college-age students in the state of Pennsylvania, and at the same time, community colleges are offering lower cost and affordable options. And unfortunately, this has caused our Commonwealth campuses to decline, the enrollment at those campuses to decline. And as Mary Lee mentioned, this is not a new problem. Since I've been on the board in 2018, the board has recognized that our Commonwealth system has been under strain. That's why we asked Neely, the board asked Neely to come back with recommendations on how to have a long-term sustainable plan for our Commonwealth system. This is not the president's decision. It is our decision. And as trustees, we're responsible for making the hard calls to set up the long-term health and excellence of this university. But Penn State is not a business, and our objective isn't profitability. Our mission is to provide a world-class affordable education, but the numbers matter. They do matter, and keeping underutilized campuses open despite shrinking enrollment is not financially sustainable. With this painful vote, Penn State saves more than $50 million a year in operating expenses and over $200 million in deferred maintenance. We free up critical resources that we can reinvest in the campus that remain open, in expanding academic offerings and enhancing the student experience. Penn State will provide support for the students affected by these closures. As President Benapudi mentioned, will increase assistance with transferring, offering, and academic advising. For our faculty and staff, the university will work with you diligently to find new positions or treat you with the dignity and respect you deserve. I love Penn State. Penn State changed my life, and I wanted to continue to change people's lives for generations to come. But this vote is about making the tough decision today that will ensure a brighter future for Penn State. So now's the time to adapt, to evolve, and find a new pathway forward for fulfilling our mission, to invest in excellence, and to create a brighter future. So yes, it's a tough decision, but I believe it's the right one for Penn State, and I will support this resolution.
Thank you, Brandon. Moving next to Tracy.
Thank you, David. I, like my colleagues, would like to take this opportunity to thank Neely and her working group team for the producing your efforts in producing the Commonwealth Campus report and accompanying recommendations. I thought you did an outstanding job. It was an in-depth, and I know that you really relied on a lot of sources and people and support for this report, and it was very comprehensive. One of the many metrics that stood out to me is the large number of colleges and universities, 237, including 39 public four-year institutions and 106 private nonprofit institutions just within the state of Pennsylvania. The Commonwealth ranks fourth in the country for the number of higher education institutions, only behind California, Texas, and New York. With a shrinking younger population, also known as the demographic or enrollment cliff, the competition for these students will be enormous. Of the 12 Commonwealth campuses under review, total enrollment in each is 850 or less. Penn State needs to adapt today for the long-term sustainability of the university. We have received flat funding from the state for many years, but have not increased in-state tuition at our Commonwealth campuses, despite ongoing increases in our operating and personnel costs. While not an easy decision by any means, as my colleagues have said, but as a fiduciary of the university, I support Dr. Bendapudi's recommendation, and I encourage my colleagues on the board to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. Kelly?
Great. Thank you. I'm trying to lower my hand here. I prepared some remarks so that I could remain on point and truthfully not to get too emotional on this, so bear with me. As many of you know, I had the wonderful opportunity to visit each of our Commonwealth campuses, and every campus is unique and beautiful in its own way. During these visits, I had the opportunity to talk to faculty, staff, students, and alumni, and there is no doubt the deep love and pride that they have for their campuses, and rightfully so. So this vote is incredibly difficult for me, and truthfully, I'm struggling with it. But like many others, I absolutely recognize that we cannot continue with the Commonwealth campus system as it operates currently. I've read every email, every text, every voicemail message, and I've talked to many people. And most people do agree that this change is needed, a change is needed. And quite frankly, many even agree that some campuses do need to close, just not theirs. While I will support whatever the vote the trustees go with either way, but I do have a couple of things that I would like to get some confirmation on from a path going forward. And Neely mentioned many of these already, so that some I'll go quickly so I won't repeat too much. But I also think it's not a bad thing to communicate and share these paths, because I think this is what is going forward. So first, I want to be assured that Penn State will fully support the campuses that will continue as traditional Commonwealth campuses. And that includes deploying the full range of the university's resources, academic, financial, human, because we need to ensure these campuses' successes, not only now, but in the future. As Mary Lee said, we don't want to be revisiting this again in a few years. I recognize that the university will evaluate each campus's academic offerings to ensure that they're aligned with the needs of the regions they serve. But I also want to be assured that any unique or vital programs from the campuses that will no longer to continue under the Commonwealth campus model, such as nursing, wildlife, forestry, surveying, that they will be preserved and relocated to remaining campuses. For decades, our campuses operated in silos and with restricted service areas, which caused these campuses to compete against each other. Thankfully, many of those barriers have been loosening in recent years. So we must work collaboratively to help our students be successful. And we need to show that each student now and prospective students, we need to show them everything that Penn State can offer. And then secondly, for the campuses that will no longer continue as Commonwealth campuses after the 2-year transition period, my understanding, and it's what I've been communicating to people, and I believe Neely has also confirmed in her opening remarks, is that the process of reimagining and repurposing these locations will begin now. I've seen the frustration in many emails, the news articles, social media posts, letters to the editors expressing concern that community input was not considered during this first phase. So I need you to confirm that during this next phase, this is exactly when this repurposing happens. And this is exactly when community members, local industry, local government, alumni will be encouraged to participate and consider different ideas. I've heard, could Penn College of Technology establish a site at one of these locations? Can we partner with local industries to create workforce development centers, training hubs? Could campuses become special purpose sites or partner with other educational groups? There are countless innovative and community focused ideas being suggested. And my understanding is that this next phase of this reimagining and repurposing of these campuses will occur in parallel with the personalized transition support that we're going to be providing each student and each faculty and staff. So in conclusion, I just want that confirmation that my understanding of these path forwards for the campuses that will remain as traditional Commonwealth campuses and the ones that will not, that my understanding of these path forwards are correct.
Thank you, Kelly. I think Neely is going to respond. We'll take that as a question, Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly, thank you so much. And I want to assure you that your understanding is absolutely correct on all the points you raised. I'm happy to go point by point, but you've hit upon exactly how we intend to proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I do just want to make a note. Reference was made to the leak, and I want to make sure the public's aware that we have not concluded the source of that leak at this point in time. So reference was made that it was a trustee. We're not absolutely positive of that at this point. So the review is being examined. I was asked to clarify that on the chat. So Narain, you're next.
All right, thanks, David. I'll do my best not to repeat what my colleagues have already said. But I left our last meeting in the camp that we needed to spend more time on this, and it was important that we do so. A couple of things have changed since last week, though, that changed my position on that. One is I went back and reviewed not just the underlying data, but the analysis and the answers to 3 rounds of questions that I provided to the administration, and they were kind enough to respond to all of them pretty much. And after reviewing it, I concluded that there were really only 2 Hail Mary chances of changing the outcome of the actual decision. And those were some of the things Ted talked about. It would take a 20% increase, sustained 20% increase in state funding. And I'll correct Ted, it's not $14 million donation. That covers us for about a year, not even a year. It would be actually about $1 billion endowment to continue to do this. And I just think that those are true Hail Marys that we should try to pursue. And I'm not giving up on those, but I don't think we should postpone a decision for that. The second is there is a cost of delaying. There's a cost of waiting. Before joining this board, I spent 6 years on the advisory board for the mechanical engineering department. And for 6 straight years, I saw them struggle because they had to reduce academic support costs in a major that is one of the highest demand majors in our college, the highest enrollment. And because of these allocations and trying to fund areas that weren't self-sufficient, we were making choices. And I just worry that we continue to make those choices. Even the crown jewels in this portfolio will die off over time. And we can't continue to make those false trade-offs. I agree that there's a lot of work we have to do to gain acceptance of this decision or these recommendations across all of our constituencies. And I think we have to do that work. But I would argue at this point in time, the administration's time is better spent on putting together the detailed action plans for all the things that Kelly talked about. And I think this is a decision that's been facing us for decades, and we're finally getting to it. And I see no upside to waiting at this stage. I think the sooner we move forward, the sooner we can impact this and start avoid having to make the false trade-offs we've had to make over those last 15 to 20 years. So I'd encourage my colleagues to push this forward, and let's get on with the execution phase.
Thank you, Noreen. Don Cairns.
Yeah, thank you. And I also want to commend our leadership team for confronting this difficult situation. We definitely need some major changes. I'm not disagreeing with that. However, I'm not on board with the plan that's presented. And largely, I think because all the great points that Kelly raised, I think there's too many questions there, not enough answers yet before we make these final closure decisions. So I would like to see that done in a different way. So if today's measure does not pass, I'm prepared to propose an alternative that allows at least 3 of these campuses a 2-year runway to reimagine and revamp themselves instead of a 2-year wind down. And I'm hoping if the opportunity comes, I'm hoping we can work together on that type of alternative plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. I think Bob Beard was next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're clearly seeing some themes developing on both sides of this argument, so I'm not going to echo a lot of what my colleagues have said. First, I wanted to thank everybody who reached out to me personally via phone calls, emails, texts, in-person conversations. I truly appreciate the passion around this. And I think it was Mary Lee that said many of us, if not most of us on this board, have been faced with making similar decisions that are absolutely going to change the course of the organization. And these are very, very difficult. So I want everybody to know, those that reached out to me, that, I'm making this decision with as much data as I can possibly have in front of me and with enough data to make what I think is the right decision. Secondly, and I will echo my colleagues, some of my colleagues along these lines, President Bendapudi had the option to kick this can down the road as has been done in the past. And she chose to do the right thing, which is to put a plan together as we asked her to do, and put the best plan together that she and her administration believe will chart our course forward. So I want to thank her for that. Again, there's no easy solution to this, and this group can what if ourselves for the next 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 years and still not come to a complete agreement on what the right answer is. So I will echo what Noreen said. I think it's time for us to vote on this, and wherever the vote comes out, I will absolutely support the decision that the board makes, but I encourage us to vote on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bob. Chris Hoffman.
Thank you, Chair Cleppinger. Hopefully you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
In a big room. So, but I also want to echo the thoughts of Neely and the administration for the work they've done. I've been on this board for 10 years, and there's been a lot of discussion on the Commonwealth campuses. And over the last 1.5, 2 years, we finally started getting some data that actually has some meaningful results that we can kind of look at, and as we think about where we're going in the future. as you know, I represent as a farmer, and I represent a lot of the rural Pennsylvania. And I've been getting a lot of calls from many people who are part of this Commonwealth. And I would be dismissed if I didn't at least kind of give them a voice here today. As much as I believe that we have a lot of opportunities to do great things, I also believe that there's probably some consolidation that needs to be done. But I think that as I look at this, the process that we went through 3 months and 1 day ago, we were sitting in an executive session laying out some data, discussing about which campuses were viable, which were maybe viable, and some that were solid and safe. And then we were going to go to the communities and ask for suggestions, ask for reasonable solutions. And so what I've been hearing from the constituents and the folks from the Commonwealth is that they have meaningful ideas. They have things that we should be considering. And I just think that this process, as much as I appreciate it, and as much as I appreciate all my colleagues on this board, we really have moved very quickly. And that the solutions that I've been told have been sent in or have been kind of socialized, I've not seen them, but I've heard about them. And so I really believe that, you know, this is a land grant institution. Not that every place needs to have a campus, but I think everyone who pays taxes, everyone that has put students through this university, every alumni, everyone has the ability to have some type of conversation in the future of where we go and how we do it. A lot of these rural campuses that are to be closed have some great agricultural uses. I understand that we're going to be looking at repurposing and moving and all that, but in my business, we don't make decisions and then figure out how we're going to do it. We need to be able to have a clear path moving forward so that we know that this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to make sure that we're addressing those needs. Agriculture has tons of needs. I'm concerned about our land script fund and the non-preferred vote that's going to happen here in the next couple of weeks. So I just, for me at this point, I have a real struggle to be able to vote for this today, because I believe that we need more conversation. Leak or no leak really doesn't matter when we move forward. This is really some meaningful change. And once we make this vote, we can't go back. And so I feel like a little bit more time is needed as we try to prepare the direction that we're going. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Kevin Schuyler.
Yeah, thanks, David. I want to take a moment to share a student perspective on the campus closures. But firstly, I want to thank all my student peers from across the Commonwealth who have reached out over the past few weeks to share and provide their feedback on the situation at hand. Above any concerning factors like the oversupply of higher ed in PA or population demographic forecasts, the driving factor for me in this decision has been the student experience at these 7 campuses. Affordability and ROI, or return on investment, are driving factors for so many college students, especially in PA. And despite the countless success stories that we've seen from our Commonwealth campus students, I believe the Au Pairs student flow report really paints the picture relative to affordability and ROI. We've seen an alarming chunk of first-year students at these 7 campuses ending their PSU experience short of degree completion, meaning we are failing them on a return on investment. They are achieving nothing but debt from Penn State, and that is a problem that I think we need to address. I think it's also important to remind ourselves that our fulfillment of the land grant mission has evolved greatly since 1862 through extension, Invent Penn State, World Campus, our K-12 outreach, and more. Ultimately, I do support the administration's plan before us today to create more robust collaborative educational experiences across all of our campuses that drive a higher percentage of students towards degree completion. I'm also confident that us as a board will keep the administration accountable in these next 2 years to support our students, faculty, and staff during the transition period. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Barry?
Yes, Chair Clevenger. Couple of things. The gist, when we boil it all down, of why we're having these discussions is the $19 million annual operating deficit reported on these campuses. Now, if we look at those actual financial impacts of these closures, I think first we have to look at the fact that, and other trustees have brought this up in the past, is we don't allocate to those campuses their pro rata share of the state appropriation of about roughly $6,000 per student. Obviously, those dollars are intended to support and make more affordable the education for those in-state students. We may take the position, some may take the position that closing these campuses won't affect that appropriation. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I certainly know that I would not be comfortable being on the other side of the table with taking questions from a congressperson down in Harrisburg saying, now that you've cut loose 5%, 10% of your in-state students by closing these Commonwealth campuses, why shouldn't your appropriation, which is designed to support those students, decline by 5 or 10%? What Harrisburg would actually do, who knows? It could be better, it could be worse, but that's not really an advantageous position to be in, asking for more money when we're cutting loose thousands of in-state students. That's about $16 million per year that we don't allocate to those campuses, and that's certainly not all. At any point in time, 550 students here at University Park started their career at one of these Commonwealth campuses. Those 550 students pay $12 million or more in tuition each year that gets credited to University Park, but they would not exist here if not for those Commonwealth campuses. They wouldn't just magically drop in for their junior and senior years here if not for those Commonwealth campuses providing the opportunity for them to start their journey. And that's a significant financial impact. Those two alone could very well be more than the 19 million that we are concerned about with regard to the operating deficit per se. We also have an issue where we had an old budget model. By the old budget model, those campuses are breaking even. By the new budget model, we see this $19 million deficit presented. Now, I wasn't a big fan of the old budget model. I think it needed updating, but that doesn't mean the new budget model is magic pixie dust either and doesn't have shortcomings. There are several elements to that new budget model that, quite frankly, shortchange the Commonwealth campuses. They get treated less fairly in those allocations than do, let's say, the various colleges at University Park. I won't go into all the details on that. Just to save some time, but that's significant. We also had presented to us that if we fully allocated the administrative overhead expenses of the university writ large, that allocation would slap another $21 million of expenses onto the Commonwealth campuses, the 7 Commonwealth campuses. Now, full allocation accounting makes sense in a lot of venues. It makes sense for a lot of purposes. It doesn't make sense for this purpose. The only way it would make sense for this purpose if we had a plan and we were committed to, if we dropped these 7 Commonwealth campuses, that we were going to reduce those overhead budgets for IT support and central administration by $21 million. There's no plan to do that, and that won't happen because that's not the way those costs work. So that was thrown in there to color and make the Commonwealth campuses look like a bigger drain on the system than they are. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be, and we shouldn't have always been, looking for ways that we can help to create the most thriving, the most long-term sustainable, the most successful, the most impactful Commonwealth campus system that we can. No question about that. And that may, at some point in time, require that we reduce the number of Commonwealth campuses. But that should be the charge, is to always look to create the strongest Commonwealth campus system. And as Mary Lee said, if we don't address these things we're going to be back here playing Russian roulette in 2 or 3 or 5 years with more of these campuses. We saw a 7% decline in the demographics over the last decade and a 25% decline in enrollment at Commonwealth campuses. We're going to face stronger headwinds in the decade to come. So when we see a 15% decline in the demographics, are we going to see a 40 or 50% decline in our Commonwealth campus enrollment? If we don't change the way we're operating, we certainly should expect to see exactly that. And we don't want to be back here again in 5 years, cutting more campuses for the same reasons. Now, obviously, there are some that would like to just divest of the Commonwealth campus system. And if that's an intentional and considered decision, then that's one thing. But to just bleed the process out is another. Over these years, over this last decade, and I don't think any of this was intentionally done by anybody with the idea of we want to do this to bleed out the Commonwealth campus system. But actions we have taken as a university, as a board, have, and I think it's unintentional, but they have worked against the Commonwealth campus system. There are many of these examples. One that's critical is we have clearly moved our target market for our recruiting of students. We have moved that target market more heavily towards out-of-state students. We have moved that target market much more heavily towards very high income families and students. We have moved that target market to more modest academic qualifications for our students. We've moved that target market to one that sees the brand and the brand value as heavily influenced by athletics, the whiteout, and social aspects to that Penn State experience. And that's fine. That's not necessarily the wrong thing to do, but in doing so, what we undeniably do, because all of those parameters, out-of-state students, high income students, students who place a high premium on those social athletic aspects of the brand, those are the exact students who are going to be less likely to be involved and interested in the Commonwealth campuses.
Barry,
So
please try to wrap it up.
okay,
I've given you extra leeway already. Please try to
do
wrap it up.
have implications.
You've already had 7 minutes, Barry. I'm trying to respect the other trustees here.
Well, David, if we had just stipulated at the beginning of the meeting that everyone felt that the administration did a wonderful job, and I know we all know they worked hard, we could have saved about a half hour right there. So I don't feel particularly guilty of using a couple of minutes to discuss this decision, which is going to impact this university forever forward. So I sorry, but not sorry.
Appreciate your comments. Ally?
Hey, first time using Zoom, couldn't unmute. Thank you, Chair. This is obviously a difficult moment for all of us, as I can hear everyone, and I want to begin by acknowledging that, especially to the students, faculty, staff, and communities directly impacted with this decision. So your presence and contributions have shaped the legacy of Penn State, as we all know, and that deserves recognition and respect in itself. But specifically as a former athlete, I also want to speak directly to those student athletes. I know what the pride comes along with representing your campus on the field, in the classroom, and in the community. So please know your efforts also haven't gone unnoticed, and you deserve our continued support as this transition unfolds. This topic has obviously been dragging on for years. I haven't been there previously since the 2022 experience, but of this conversation. But I understand it's been painful at times, and also given us a chance to deeply consider what kind of institution that we want to be moving forward. So how can we evolve by still honoring our mission after all these years and reviewing the data and listening to the financial realities and also the long-term goals? I believe this decision, while incredibly hard, is the right one for the future of the university. So first and foremost, I do want to sincerely thank President Bendapudi for all of her efforts, her strong, steady, compassionate leadership throughout this process, leading through something that's complex, like a lot of us other trustees have mentioned, takes a lot of courage and vision, and she's shown both of those. Also to Michael Wade Smith, thank you as well, echoing what Carl had said about you. Thank you for that time and commitment. So today I want to just let everyone know I vote yes with empathy, most importantly, and with the expectation that we show up for those affected and the real resources and care. So I hope this marks a turning point in how we engage with our community with more transparency, inclusion, and shared commitment, like President Bendapudi has shown us all along, into shaping Penn State's next chapter. Thank you.
Rick Sokoloff.
Thank you. I'll try and be precise so as to preserve time for others and not be criticized by others for warbling. I take very seriously the land grant mission, and I know President Bendapudi does as well. And as a result of that, I challenged Michael Wade Smith and our administration to really define for me how our other peer land grant university colleagues have really addressed the identical mission that we have in Pennsylvania. And I'm going to read this because I don't want to misstate the statistics. They were put together by au pair, and of our land grant institutions, there is none that have more campuses than Penn State. We have 22, including our World Campus. Connecticut has 6. California has 11, but a number of them have their own accreditation and operate as individual campuses. Ohio State, as Mary Lee alluded to, has 6. Hawaii has 4, and Colorado State has 3. The rest of the land grant schools, 57 of them created in 1862, have 1 or 2. Of all the matriculation at these campuses, looking exclusively at the 1862 land grant campuses, Penn State has 13 of the 20 smallest campuses. We have 21 of the smallest 50 campuses. We all acknowledge a significant obligation to fulfill our land grant mission. But our land grant mission does not include serving areas that unfortunately cannot support the services that we are trying to provide. And we have seen that over the last decade. It's unfortunate, but true. Just one other thing I want to disabuse, and this is in page 5 of the report. So the admissions to University Park are not cannibalizing enrollment to the Commonwealth campuses. Analysis show that students not admitted to University Park most often choose other large public or private universities. And we track through Matt Melvin every one of the students and where they end up when we admit them here and they don't attend. So there's not a concept of somehow trying to bring more students to University Park to the denigration of the Commonwealth campuses. Lastly, in terms of trying to angle towards out-of-state students, higher income students, it's my understanding, and please, administration, correct me if I'm wrong, Penn State has more Pell Grant students than the entire Ivy League combined. There can be no sense that we are not totally focused on fulfilling our mission to serve those lower income students, first generation students, of which I was one, and that is going to continue. And I do thank President Bendapudi and the entire administration for guiding us through this very difficult process. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Juliana?
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to briefly mention, going back to when we first talked to Neely as a candidate for presidency of Penn State, and all throughout the initial stages of her tenure, student success has been at the center of it. And so I want to thank all of my colleagues, every single one, for all of your comments this evening. I think the decision that we make here will be driven by many, many factors. For me, Kevin Schuyler's words about the student experience are most influential in my decision. I really want to thank Bob Beard for saying, you know, this isn't something that we need to put off. I do believe we need to move forward with deliberation and speed on how we transition from here. But the student experience and student success are going to drive my decision this evening, and I will be voting to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliana. Rob?
Thank you, David. And I too, Rick, I'm a first generation graduate of Penn State, and actually the first male in my family to finish college. And I am grateful for my Penn State education, and it kind of fuels my commitment to trying to really dig in and learn, and especially with a decision like this, is to, you know, I spent a lot of time, as many of you did, and my fellow trustees, I commend you, all of you. You've demonstrated a tremendous amount of effort and dedication to studying the facts and digging in deep, and I think that's really important. We've got a lot of headwinds. I prepared a very long thing, and I'm going to be a little cryptic here because I've got to go through my notes. Many things have already been said, and I want to respect the time as well. But there's a lot of headwinds. We're in a very challenging position as a university. It's not just the demographic cliff. I mean, I was on the finance committee for many years. I've been on this board 10 years. I've been a volunteer at Penn State for 30 years. You look around, the world has changed. The costs have skyrocketed. You know, healthcare, our buildings are aging. You know, insufficient state funding. When it got cut by Corbett administration in 2011, that was hurtful. We haven't even made it back. It really changed things. It made much more precious the remaining dollars that we had to spend, and we've got to be judicious about that and very thoughtful. But our landscape, this competitive landscape, is oversaturated. When you look at what happened during COVID, you saw all of a sudden the world changed. Traditional programs offered online education, and online education has now developed and evolved into a hybrid education model. And that hybrid education model has offered the marketplace enormous saturation at a lower cost. And you can't just sit there and deny it. You have to do something about that. I mean, as we look ahead, it's not the demographic cliff, although that's a big factor. But there's never been a national dialogue that there is today that says, hey, is a college education even valuable? Is it worth the money? Should we send our kids to the trades instead? You know, there's just so much against us. And then you look at the, you know, the newspaper. I was reading an article recently, and it was all about the new gig economy. And one of the points that the editor was making in the article was that, you know, many careers in the gig economy don't even require a college education at all. You look at a lot of these things, and there are tremendous things that are in front of us that, you know, make it even harder, make our job even harder. And I guess, you know, one of the most important roles that we have as trustees, use our experiences, use our careers, the things we've learned along the way to help guide Penn State, to help move Penn State forward. And really to put us on a stronger long-term trajectory. And as a trustee and as a volunteer and someone who's been around a long time, I know there's people that really depend on us to lead the way, and they depend on all of you to lead the way. Change is hard. You know, it's constant, it's challenging, it's necessary, and it's hard. And sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. And I remember back in business, how many times we sat on our hands as the market shifted around us, and it almost passed us by in a few instances. And I can tell you that if you're not in tune with the competitive landscape and you're not ready to make the shifts so that you can position yourself in the path of growth, you miss out. And, you know, that's not where, I don't want Penn State to be left behind. That's not who we are. So I'm going to close, just say, listen, I appreciate this dialogue. I appreciate the work that everyone's been doing. Many of us have been impacted by this university in a very positive way, and I appreciate people sharing their sentiments. I will be voting to support this initiative, and I really appreciate the work that President Bendaputi and her team have done. And I just urge my fellow trustees to please join me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Barry, before I return to you, I just want to make sure that I've exhausted any comments or questions from any other trustees at this point. I'm not seeing any other hands, so Barry, we will return to you.
Yeah, something I'm having difficulty rectifying here. We were presented with information along the way that was essentially, we've tried everything. We've tried everything over the last so many years to put the Commonwealth campuses in question, you know, on better footing, et cetera, et cetera. And we hear that. And then we hear, well, you know, the nice thing about, you know, reaping these, you know, supposed savings from closing these Commonwealth campuses will allow us to make the necessary investments so that the other Commonwealth campuses will thrive. Well, those two things are incongruent. If we've been trying everything, all the campuses have been facing challenges. If we've been doing everything we can to make all these Commonwealth campuses as thriving and as effective and as impactful as we can, then what are the new investments we're going to do with this quote unquote savings that are going to benefit the Commonwealth campuses and allow them to be in a better position to better serve these communities and these students? Because those two things don't go together. And quite frankly, without hearing anything about what those investments are or what commitments are being made, it doesn't jive with what we're being told about what we have done.
Thank you. Nicholas?
Thank you, Chair Kleppinger. I'd like to thank everybody on this call and everybody that's been involved in these deliberations, especially over the past month. And I'd like to thank all the community members, all my colleagues on the faculty, all the students that have reached out to me specifically, and I'm sure to many of the people that are on this call right now. As the academic trustee and also as a faculty member at one of our Commonwealth campuses, I find this to be a really challenging vote. And as I weigh the data that we've seen and the discussions that we've had, I still can't bring myself to support the closures. And I understand the urgency of change that Trustee Fenza just brought up, but I no matter how many times I come back to it, I simply cannot believe that closure is the only, let alone the best, but the only path forward. In my estimation of these things, we have only just begun to ask the hard questions that, in my opinion, these campuses have long deserved, and questions that we as a board, frankly, have left so long overdue. I think that closing them now preempts precisely the kind of revitalization that I think that we say we want for the campus ecosystem. Put another way, I think we owe them more than closure. Frankly, I think we owe them a fair chance to adopt and find some way to thrive. This vote, in my view, cuts short that opportunity that's before us, and that seems to be outpouring into our inboxes every day. And so, in my estimation, voting to close these campuses is more than a fiduciary decision. I think it's a statement. It's a statement about who we are. It's a statement about who we choose to serve and who we're going to leave behind. And I myself believe that we could be more creative. I think we could be more collaborative and more committed to renewal than this moment that we're in right now suggests to me. And so when I vote, I'm not going to vote in favor. I'm going to vote against. And it's not because these challenges aren't real. It's because our values must be real. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Anthony, before I go back to you, Jay hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you, David. As you look at the ecosystem of this university right now, there are three areas that are facing a time of great uncertainty. One is our research enterprise, as Mary Lee Schneider addressed. Factors beyond our control threaten millions of dollars in research expenditures. But our game plan has been to charge forward aggressively, seeking new and innovative ways to expand that enterprise. That is bold leadership. That is defiant optimism, but fed by a history of success at Penn State. The second area is athletics. The very business model with which we have operated intercollegiate athletics is undergoing massive change, ultimately controlled by judges, lawyers, and potentially legislators beyond our control. Even with those, the very business model that we base our athletics on, this board has voted to invest $700 million into a stadium, engage in a $100 million plus capital campaign. Between facility upgrades and the head coach's contract, we've invested nearly $1 billion into football. Now, that's because we have faith that Penn State and Penn Staters will respond, because we always have. When we turn to our Commonwealth campuses, they too face challenges. But rather than look for innovation or rely on our unique qualities and leadership that the university has always shown to expand the accessibility of higher education, we are being given a choice between a status quo or a retreat. We started out the Future States Initiative with 3 phases. The third phase was exactly what we're talking about, looking for innovative solutions, looking for those kind of things. But phase 3 was cut off in February for this new approach and this new proposal. We wanted input, but we gave them an email address to send input in. We did not engage them like we should have. So we've been offered 2 choices today. One is the status quo. That's not a real option. We all know that. And it's one that should not have even been presented. The other option is to close campuses. So given an unrealistic option and a not so bad option, that not so bad option suddenly looks reasonable to a lot of us and has a sense of urgency. But there are other options. They will take time. But if we're committed to doing what is best for this university, we'd be better off having more information, having more options, and having gotten input from people who have their proverbial hands in the dirt on these campuses every day. Simply saying the numbers are the numbers, or saying we'll have to do something now because it's been long enough, is hardly a rallying cry for Penn Staters. Nobody ever leads boldly with that kind of rationalization as their North Star. The call to serve on this board is a very deep responsibility. And that this responsibility involves our fiduciary responsibility. We have heard from our administration's success in fundraising and how we are in great shape financially. We've heard that. We heard that at the last board meeting. So as I hear those words, it's hard for me to understand how, on one hand, things are better than they've ever been, but on the other hand, this is some sort of existential crisis to this university. Let's all look within ourselves. We should think beyond the people on this call to think and ask yourself, what is the harm of this university if we allow our best and brightest to come up with new innovative solutions, giving them a little more time? What is the harm if we engage business and community leaders and political leaders and faculty and students and administrators at these campuses and give them a little bit more time to forge ahead, to reimagine, repurpose, and reinvigorate these campuses that are the lifeblood of our educational mission? At the end of the day, we can argue about how we would run this place if it were a business. At the end of the day, we can talk about the numbers, but some of the numbers that we've gotten are not complete. Some of the numbers we've asked for. How much do we save? A $50 million number has been thrown about. No one can prove that. That's an unknown. Some of these issues, what do we do with the land? Some of these things have yet to be settled. Those factors, the fact that we don't have that information, should be concerning to us. I would advocate that we wait until we have more information and more answers. This is by far the most important vote any of us as trustees will have made, are going to make, and likely the most important vote we will ever make. Not having all the information should concern us, but some of us have been vocal and tried to rally support. A friend who views life only as wins and losses mentioned that it's nice that some of us are tilting at windmills, that we're optimists, but I am a defiant optimist. Why have we always acted boldly at Penn State? Because we've always believed that our alumni, Penn Staters, administration, faculty, students everywhere are different. We've always believed in a vision of Penn State because we always come through. We have never faltered. So why do we now believe we can't rally to the cause? Do we have so little faith in our people, in the power of our 800,000 living alumni, that we do not want to challenge them? Has somewhere this board and this administration lost the belief that our Penn State connection cannot overcome all? It is our hope and the hope of so many people around the Commonwealth that we've heard from that this board will reinvest in our belief in our history of defiant optimism, our history of charging forward as national leaders, always extending educational accessibility to change lives and not retreating from the idea of accessibility. If we have lost that belief in our people, then perhaps we're not the board this university deserves.
Thank you, Jay. Again, Anthony, I'll delay you because Matt McGloin hasn't spoken yet. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a much longer statement prepared for tonight, and like most of you, I've struggled with this decision tremendously. But at the end of the day, for me, what it comes down to is I believe in the principles and vision behind the process moving forward. And I'm confident that it provides a responsible path forward for the university and for the Commonwealth campus system as a whole. I will continue to advocate for the future and strength of our Commonwealth campuses, and I will always continue to support our Commonwealth campuses. But I will vote in favor of closing these campuses. Again, this decision is not made lightly. It has been made with a deep sense of responsibility grounded in long-term sustainability and the greater good of the Penn State system. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Matt. All right, not seeing any additional hands, I'll turn back to you, Anthony.
I'll be brief, David. I want to thank all of you for your comments. I wholeheartedly agree. If I look solely at the data, something has to be done. As all of you know from my comments during our 4 hours of closed sessions, I think this process requires a little bit more time and engagement in these communities to give them an opportunity, since they're the ones going to be greatly impacted by what we're about to decide. I too am a first generation college graduate. My parents, middle class. My father was a blue collar worker. My mother, a stay at home, occasional secretary. I attended University Park for 4 years, and during my time at University Park, the majority of the students there were Pennsylvanians. Penn State was fulfilling its land grant mission by trying to provide an affordable education for Pennsylvanians. As Neely has pointed out, though, we have to adapt. All of us have seen that cliff, and we know changes are required. And I only ask that, as Don Carnes has suggested, and Chris Hoffman, that we allow more time. And I'm still not sure what our plans are on these campuses, and I think it's the cart before the horse for us to decide that we're going to close them and then have the administration come back to us and tell us what they intend to do. But we're going to vote tonight, and it will be the most impactful vote we will ever make on this board. It will impact this university long beyond our years, and it will impact human beings. much greater than we can ever imagine. And for those of us who've achieved a modicum of success in our lives, it's easy to be a bit dismissive of those struggles. Fortunately, while my parents were alive, they were always reminding me of our roots, and I hope all of us tonight can remember where it was you were 30 years ago and the struggles that you endured to get where you are today. And David, there won't be a need for me to call for a motion. So I think at this point, after all the questions, you want to go to the vote. I won't move to make the motion to table.
Thank you, Anthony. Ken Kane, I haven't heard from you yet.
Yes, David, thank you for the opportunity. As a relatively new board member, this is kind of fire by storm for me, but being in rural Pennsylvania, again, a first generation college student at Penn State, and a natural resource manager that is highly affected with the potential closing of Mont Alto and Du Bois. These are very hard decisions, especially for a new board member to make. However, as I look at this decision, I believe we can repurpose these campuses to the betterment of the communities. And if we make this hard decision, we'll give those campuses the opportunities to move forward in a positive way to help the communities and to help the university. And as hard as this decision is locally, I really feel that we have to make the right decision for Penn State. And that's really difficult for me, but we have to look at the big picture, and we have to help these campuses that we're considering closure a way to move forward to the betterment of their communities and the betterment of Pennsylvania and what's best for Penn State. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ken. Before I go to Ted, David Davis, we haven't heard from yet. David?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was kind of thinking through this as many of you know, I do this as my day job. So I wanted to share some perspective, particularly to the board members who are still on the fence. I day to day push clients, public sector, government entities, universities to make transformational change, right? Organization design, optimizing organizations. As noted before, change is hard, but we all understand the reality of higher education right now. So it's pushing us to make a really hard decision. But if you take a step back and just look at how we got here in the process, and try to take the emotion out of what I know is an emotionally charged decision, I look and I think the process that we underwent and the conclusion, it's spotless and flawless. This initiative started off with the question, what's in the best interest for students? What's the student experience? It was data informed. I think we all don't question the efficacy of the data. We see the trend with enrollment and where the puck is headed. I don't think anyone can disagree with that. Neely then convened the working group. They are the experts, to Karen's point. They brought in additional subject matter experts to bring in their perspective. So despite the data leak, I think the process that we put in place to get here is data informed and had the best thinking around the table to get here. So I think our rollout strategy is empathetic. I think the 2-year period, tenure for faculty, prioritization for staff placement. I just, again, want to give kudos to Neely and the team, because I know it's hard to recommend hard decisions, but you did it, and you did it with integrity. You did it with kindness. You did it with empathy. So I am very supportive, Dr. Bendaputi, of your proposal. And I felt like that was helpful information for people who are still on the fence. Organizations have to make these changes to be viable and to survive. And so that's all.
Thank you, David. I see no other hands, so I'll go back to you, Ted.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I almost feel embarrassed that I'm a second generation Penn Stater, but I'm not embarrassed because the first generator Penn Stater was my dad, who went to Mont Alto, and my mother, who went to UP. So look, quickly, what I'd ask you to do, you all know I only have a month left on the board. Give me that month for you all to read what I submitted from those 3 campuses I mentioned earlier that show how we grow enrollment there, and allow me to spend that month reaching out to the other 4 and come forward with a proposal from all 7, how we can close this problem, take advantage of technology, the AI that I mentioned, and come forward with a proposal how all 7 can increase enrollment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Seeing no other hands, I think it's time to call for a vote on this. We have a motion from Mary Lee and a second by Rob Fenza, and I will ask for Shannon to call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Kleppener. Trustee Beard,
Yes.
Trustee Black,
Yes.
Trustee Brown,
No.
Trustee Cairns,
No.
Trustee Collins,
Yes.
Trustee Davis,
Davis,
Yes.
you, Trustee Delegati,
Yes.
Trustee Detweiler,
Yes.
Trustee Dietrich,
No.
Trustee Fenchak,
No.
Trustee Fenza,
Yes.
Trustee Gursahany,
Yes.
Trustee Harpster, Trustee Harpster,
Yes.
Trustee Hazencoat,
Yes.
Trustee Hoffman,
No.
Trustee Kane,
Yes.
Trustee Kleppinger,
yes.
Trustee Krieger,
Yes.
Trustee Lebrano,
No.
Trustee Lynch,
Yes.
Trustee McGloin,
Yes.
Trustee Nassib,
Yes.
Trustee Honorado,
Yes.
Trustee Paterno,
No.
Trustee Potts,
Yes.
Trustee Quintos,
Yes.
Trustee Regal,
Yes.
Trustee Rowland,
No.
Trustee Schneider,
Yes.
Trustee Schuyler Kevin,
Yes.
Trustee Schuyler Matt,
Yes.
Trustee Short,
Yes.
Trustee Sokolov.
Yes.
The motion passes 25 yeas, 8 nays.
Thank you, Shannon. And I do want to express my sincere appreciation to the thoughtfulness that all of you as trustees have given to this critical issue. At this point, we can move forward with the reimagining of these geographic sites consistent with the commitment that President Bendapudi has made on working with the local communities, the local politicians, and other developers that may be interested in these facilities. With that, we have finished the agenda for tonight, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.